We begin in the year 1991, where we see a mysterious house in a dark environment. Inside, we see a little girl named Isabel, and she is trying to feed her rat. Suddenly, screams and banging sound from upstairs, shaking the ceiling. The little girl is frozen, and even the pet scurries away. At that moment, blood begins to drip down the walls. The girl covers her ears with both hands and closes her eyes as a way to escape the horror she is experiencing. 30 years later, Isabel is now an adult woman with a 6-year-old daughter named Hannah. One day, Isabel forgets to pick her daughter up from school, but luckily her mother is there to help. Later, she drives back to her parents' house, where she and her daughter live. On the way home, she sees a strange man with a backpack. The woman just passes by him without thinking much about his strange appearance. She arrives home just in time for dinner. She goes to serve her father, but sees a guest. It's the sheriff of the town. When he leaves, the curious woman asks her father why he visited him. He tells her that a strange man, known as the Wanderer, has been digging holes around the region, which is worrying people. The sheriff wanted to know if Roel had any information about this terrifying individual, especially since the authorities had made a shocking discovery in one of the holes dug by this man. Isabel tells her father that she saw the Wanderer on her way home, and her father believes the police will catch him soon. That night, we see the Wanderer digging a hole and acting strangely. Suddenly, he feels something moving in the shadows. He slowly looks behind him. The atmosphere is unsettling, as if something is hiding in the shadows. The scene cuts instantly to the next morning, where we see the Wanderer dead in the hole he dug. His body is discovered the next day by the authorities, and as they investigate the scene, Isabel and her daughter walk by. A group of archaeologists is called in for further investigations. The authorities also state that he passed away due to a heart attack. Jonas leads his team of archaeologists to one of the holes. Inside, we see a woman mysteriously covered in dirt. The group is excited and surprised by this discovery as they prepare for further examinations. The scene then shifts to Isabel, waking abruptly from sleep. There is noise coming from her mother's room, and she hurriedly heads there. Elska is having a terrible nightmare. She is trembling and struggling to breathe. The young woman is worried about her mother, but manages to calm her down and help her breathe normally. At that moment, Hannah wakes up and runs to her mother, saying she had a nightmare. Isabel carries her little girl in her arms, comforting her and reassuring her. Things become more concerning when Isabel suspects that someone may be trying to break into the house. She sees an individual standing in the yard and immediately becomes alert. She quickly informs Roel. Suspicions arise regarding the Wanderer. They think it could be him trying to break into their house. However, Roel informs the two women that he had passed away earlier from unknown causes. Isabel and her mother are shocked by the sudden news, besides being upset that Roel didn't inform them about it earlier. But now they know that the Wanderer has been removed from their list of suspects. The next day, Roel goes to meet the team of archaeologists. He thinks one of them broke into their house the night before. Jonas, the team leader, doesn't speak Dutch, so Isabel becomes the intermediary in the conversation since she understands English. Roel warns Jonas and his team to stop breaking in, threatening that he won't be kind to the next person who tries to invade their home. Isabel translates her father's words to Jonas, and Roel's message is clear to him. Jonas tells the two that he will ensure that no member of his team explores their property. Later, Isabel visits the hospital with her mother. The doctor believes Elska's illness may be psychological, so he suggests therapy for the woman. The doctor states that Elska is struggling with unprocessed trauma and that therapy is a possible solution. Isabel tells the doctor that they will consider the option. The appointment with the doctor ends, and the two women go home. When they arrive, Isabel seems upset, and her mother wonders what made her daughter suddenly so irritated. On the other hand, Roel installs a camera surveillance system to help monitor and catch the intruders. Later, Elska goes to check on her daughter. She tells Isabel not to worry about her health and assures her that everything will be fine. Isabel claims that she is unconcerned, and her mother hopes she is telling the truth. In the next scene, we see Isabel and Jonas at a local bar together. The two seem to be having a lot of fun chatting while having drinks. Afterwards, they take a long walk home, still maintaining the conversation. Jonas teases that men probably drool over Isabel, but the young woman claims it is quite the opposite. She believes her family is cursed, and goes on to narrate all the misfortunes that support her statement. Isabel states that when she was younger, her grandmother tragically passed away, and those responsible for her death were never found or punished. Her father, Roel, didn't cope well with the news of losing his mother, so he became an alcoholic and ended up losing his job as a result. Her mother, on the other hand, became emotionally unavailable and was now diagnosed with a mysterious illness. Then, her husband Neil also passed away, leaving her alone with her daughter, Hannah. These series of unfortunate events that occurred with her family over the years made her avoid relationships. Jonas does not know how to deal with this, but empathizes with the poor woman. The two part ways, but Jonas stops and watches Isabel as she leaves, with empathy in his eyes. The next day passes casually, and nothing extraordinary happens. At night, Isabel reads a story to her daughter to sleep. Afterwards, she goes to see her father, who is outside observing any strangers trying to invade their home. Just as the woman is returning inside, she bumps into someone in the house. Isabel is startled and terrified to see this strange man in her home, but the stranger immediately apologizes to her. He says he took a little of her milk. The frightened woman looks at the table where this man is standing and sees a glass of milk, along with a knife carefully placed there. Isabel's eyes widen in fear, but she tells the strange man that she doesn't mind that he took some milk. The terrified woman immediately runs to her mother, informing her that there is an armed man in their house. As she is talking to Elska, the man approaches them. The women are terrified and try to escape, but unfortunately, the man grabs Isabel's legs. He apologizes again, stating that he is doing this against his will. He weirdly claims that something is making him do this. The man then attacks Isabel, but she manages to prevent him from hurting her. Suddenly, this man starts screaming, catching the attention of Hannah, who is standing on the stairs watching the chaos unfold. The poor woman, seeing her daughter, immediately runs to her and holds her in her arms. Elska is now alone with the stranger. She grabs the knife and points it at him, but the man is not intimidated by the weapon in the woman's hands. He grabs her hand and turns the blade towards her, trying to stab her with it. Roel arrives just in time and attacks the villainous man from behind with a hammer. The authorities arrive moments later and take the intruder away in an ambulance, leaving the family to try to understand what just happened. They can only be grateful that there was no serious damage and no lives lost. News reaches Jonas about the troubling incident that Isabel's family faced. He immediately goes to visit their house. He apologizes to Isabel and her parents for this disturbing encounter. The person who broke into their house the night before turns out to be a member of Jonas's archaeological team named Radu. Jonas says he can't believe Radu would do such a thing. He even claims that the man was kind enough to be loved by everyone at work. Roel is not convinced by this story of Radu being a kind man. He says that the Wanderer was also considered kind by the people. However, look where they are now. While they talk, Isabel asks to speak with Jonas privately. She breaks down in tears in the man's arms, strongly believing that her family is cursed and unhappy. The whole situation is becoming overwhelming for her. Jonas offers comfort to Isabel in any way he can. Meanwhile, Roel and Elska are making arrangements for everyone to flee. They feel a greater danger approaching. Later, Elska goes to make tea for everyone, but suddenly she faints, breaking the ceramic cup she had placed on the table. After the incident, Isabel takes her mother to the hospital, where she gets a brain scan. After the scan, the two women leave the hospital. Just as they are about to exit, Isabel sees Leonard and Jonas entering the hospital to visit Radu and his family. Isabel follows them to Radu's room, where he is lying unconscious with his family beside him. As Isabel watches from a distance, a child in the room starts staring at her seriously through the glass doors. Isabel feels uneasy and leaves the facilities. As she heads to the elevator, she notices that this child is following her and it's becoming repugnant now. He enters the same elevator as her and begins speaking in a different language, saying "Nua Murit." Isabel repeats what he said, and the child stretches his hands towards her. The woman agrees to this handshake, and as they join hands, there is an electric shock that causes the elevator's electrical system to fail, and the elevator suddenly stops. The boy then closes his eyes and starts murmuring strange words. When he finally opens his eyes, he lets out a loud scream, as if terrified by something. Isabel then looks at her reflection in the elevator and sees the top of her head glowing. She soon realizes that there is a spirit behind her. At that moment, the elevator opens, and the terrified woman rushes out, leaving the child alone inside. Outside, Isabel finds her mother in the car, and the woman asks where her daughter was. Isabel tells Elska that she got lost on the way out of the bathroom. The young woman is still shaken by the strange encounter, and the vague phrase that the child said is still etched in her mind. The worried woman grabs her phone to translate the phrase she heard. Isabel is surprised when the translation of the words reveals, "She is still alive." At that moment, Isabel sees Jonas in the rearview mirror coming back from visiting Radu. She runs to him and starts asking questions about Radu. The young woman asks if Radu gave any reason for attacking her family. Jonas tells her that the man still hasn't awakened, but that some workers saw him digging holes by himself, away from the site. He thinks it's a coincidence, but Isabel seems very troubled, so she asks to meet with him the next day. When the two meet at the bar, Isabel shows Jonas an old man named Tom, whose son, the Wanderer, mysteriously died when he dug a hole and found something. The woman now wants to know what Jonas and his team have discovered in the holes so far. The archaeologist goes ahead and tells Isabel that they discovered an old woman inside, a bog body. The young woman is stunned by this revelation. She then urges him to accompany her to speak with Tom. The old man talks about something called Whispers of Helen, claiming that his son was directed where to dig through these whispers. The man offers Isabel his number before leaving, stating that he is available if she wants to talk more. The woman has a lot to ponder, and on the way home, Jonas asks her about the legend that she and Tom were discussing. Isabel tells him that Helen is the villain of this legend and that she whispers to people, making them do horrible things. Isabel asserts that this is all a fairy tale told to scare children and keep them away from the swamp. Jonas and Isabel enter into a heated argument because Jonas believes the woman is reading meaning into everything and taking the whole situation a bit too seriously. The poor woman had her house invaded, with her life and her family's at risk, but Jonas doesn't understand how critical the situation is. Isabel is so annoyed by Jonas's comments and reactions that she gets out of her vehicle in the middle of the road. He tries to go after her on foot, but she walks away from him faster. Eventually, Jonas catches up to Isabel. He grabs her by the arm, and when Isabel turns to look at the man who offended her with his words, she suddenly forgets the whole fight, and the two express desire, becoming intimate right there in the fields. Later, Jonas returns to camp. There he discovers that the bog body has a cut across its throat, and to his surprise, there are 4 more bodies of women in the same condition, with their throats cut vertically. In the next scene, we see Isabel at home, drinking a glass of water. At that moment, she sees something outside through the window. She goes to take a better look, wiping the glass of the window, but when she does, she sees a reflection that surprises her. However, it is just her mother behind her. Elska says she heard noises and came to check on how her daughter was doing. The next day, Roel shares a disturbing discovery he made with Hans. The surveillance camera he had installed clicked, but there were no images to show. Roel is worried about why the camera would click if it's not capturing anything. Hans feels that Roel is overreacting. He believes the family still hasn't recovered from their encounter with Radu. Hans tries to reassure the old man, saying that everything will turn out well eventually and that Radu will recover. However, Roel believes that Radu was simply being controlled by a spiritual force. Hans wants his friend to trust him and explain exactly what is happening without revealing anything. Roel leans in closer and requests a favor. The scene shifts to Hannah preparing for her school play. Isabel is there, watching her daughter, and she couldn't be prouder. At the same time, Jonas's assistant, Sonia, researches the legend of Maul. As she reads about it, we see the school children on stage reenacting the story. The legend states that Helen was the wife of a wealthy and wicked king. Walter was one of the servants of her household. Walter engaged in an improper relationship with Fiona, which was considered normal in those days. Helen became enraged when she found out that Fiona was pregnant with Walter's child. The jealous queen devised a way to get revenge on Fiona. She spread rumors throughout the village and the kingdom that Fiona practiced witchcraft and was a sorceress. In those days, this was considered the worst kind of crime. Fiona was soon thrown into the dungeons and left to await her fate, even though she had done nothing wrong. She was facing the city's wrath. She cried out to God and asked him to deliver justice for her. Moloch, the god of child sacrifice, answered her call, something she hadn't originally planned. Like any depraved devil, Moloch's deal involved Fiona giving up not only her life, but her unborn child. The curse would continue for generations, and there would be no way to stop it. Fiona was so consumed with the idea of getting revenge on Helen that she agreed to this without considering the repercussions. When she committed the sacrifice, cutting a vertical slit in her throat, her spirit was able to enter Helen's body and control her. Since then, she and Helen became one, and Helen's curse was born. The unborn generations became indebted to Moloch and would continue to pay the price of retribution for eternity. The presentation comes to an end, and Isabel takes her daughter and mother back home. On the way, they bump into the father, who is on his knees on the ground, preaching something into the soil. Isabel doesn't pay much attention to her old man and is only upset that he missed his granddaughter's play. Later, Isabel goes to visit Tom at his house. Isabel has a full experience where the old man talks about psychic vibrations. He manages to hypnotize her and places her in a trance where she remembers things that happened in her childhood. The woman is transported back to that night in the cellar where she had that horrible encounter. Immediately, Isabel comes out of this trance, rushes to leave Tom's apartment, and heads to her car. She calls Jonas but goes straight to voicemail. Isabel is still terrified by the experience but manages to get to the camp where the group of archaeologists is. Inside the tent, Isabel begins to seek answers. Sonia enters and sees her examining things there and informs Isabel that it is a restricted area. The young woman begins to question Sonia. She asks about Jonas, and the woman tells her that Jonas is at the festival. Isabel asks more about the 8 bodies they found. She wants to know what those 8 bodies have in common. To her astonishment, Isabel learns from Sonia that the 8 bodies found are all female and from different eras. Additionally, all 8 are related. Back at home, Roel shoots one of the researchers who was entering the house. As he looks at this individual he caught invading, he begins to hear strange whispers coming from behind him. The old man slowly turns to find where this strange sound is coming from. The scene instantly cuts, and we see Isabel and her mother back at home. Isabel suddenly begins to pack her things and leave the house, and Elska asks where she is going. The young woman explains to her mother that these women were all sacrifices to Moloch, just like her grandmother was. Elska wants to know where Isabel is getting these ideas from, but the woman is tired of her mother pretending to be unaware of the situation. She states that her family is being targeted and that they are not safe. The old woman is surprised by how much Isabel must have researched to discover all this. Isabel then goes out to look for her father. Elska calls her to come back and talk, but the young woman is already gone. She also left her phone behind. Meanwhile, Jonas is trying to contact her. On the other hand, Roel is now alone in the middle of the forest. He is haunted by the darkness and suddenly sees the ghost of a woman approaching him. The poor man is brought to tears by this figure that is slowly approaching him. Suddenly, a whisper is heard in the distance, getting closer to him. Back at the festival, Sonia meets with Jonas. They talk about Isabel, and Jonas opens up to his assistant about feeling empathy for the woman. At first, Sonia thinks it's because of what happened with Radu, but that's not the case. He tells Sonia about the many losses Isabel has endured, and how she was taught to mourn at a young age and has not stopped grieving ever since. Sonia then asks Jonas if he thinks sacrifices are still happening. She tells him that when she met Isabel earlier, she was saying something about her family being in danger. Sonia puts the pieces together and suspects they may still be making sacrifices to this god Moloch. Jonas is left speechless as he takes a moment to process everything Sonia just said. He finally realizes something is wrong, and after a moment, he asks Sonia to lend him her car. Sonia is surprised by this sudden exit from Jonas. On the other side, Roel makes his way back home, but his behavior seems alarmingly different. Even Hannah notices this change and is frightened by it. Isabel calls her daughter to stay by her side. The woman watches Roel, who is still standing at the door, trying to rush in. Suddenly, he breaks the glass of the door, sticks his hand through it, and reaches for the doorknob from the inside. As he tries to reach for the keys, Isabel rushes to the door and pulls them away. The man retreats, and Isabel runs to hide her daughter. She hides Hannah in the pantry and makes the little girl promise not to let anyone in. Elska, on the other hand, runs to lock the back door. But then Roel finds his way inside and suddenly attacks her. He pins her to the ground and begins to strangle her, but Isabel rushes to the man and tries to pull him away from her mother. However, Roel is too strong for her and pushes her away with the head. The possessed man then turns his attention to Elska, who is still on the ground and continues to strangle her with all his might. He begins to scream, and the screams are so loud they echo. Isabel then strikes Roel from behind with a fireplace poker. He finally passes out on the floor. The woman finally sits down to catch her breath, but then, when she looks again, she sees that her mother has now disappeared. She calls out for her, but there is no response. At that moment, Roel regains consciousness and begins his hunt for the two women. Unknown to him, Elska has set a trap for him, and he walks into it. She places a rope just above the stairs, and as the man starts to go up, she manages to pull the rope around his neck and him. When the woman turns around, we see that she has now been possessed. Meanwhile, Jonas is trying to make his way to the house. When he hears, he rushes through the fields, but unfortunately, his foot gets caught in a bear trap. The man screams in pain. Back at the house, Isabel's mother, along with several strange individuals dressed strangely, tie an unconscious Isabel to the bed. When the woman regains consciousness, she sees the strangers performing a chant, and her mother sitting in front of her, saying it won't take long. There is a razor blade placed in front of the old woman. Isabel's mother, now possessed, cuts vertically and immediately falls to the ground. Isabel now realizes that they plan to sacrifice her to Moloch, so she begins to scream for help. Suddenly, the demon Moloch appears at the foot of the bed in front of the people. As this terrifying demonic being crawls close to Isabel and then over her, she begins to tremble and change. Jonas finally escapes from the bear trap and arrives at Isabel's house. He calls for the police and, after finding the bodies of Roel and Elska, rushes to Isabel, who is tied to the bed and unconscious. He frees her and brings her back to consciousness. After she awakens, the two rush to let Hannah out of her hiding place. Isabel is in tears as she holds her daughter in her arms, relieved to find her safe and unharmed. Time passes, and Isabel is still trying to move on after the horrific experience of that night. One day she meets with Jonas. The man offers for her and Hannah to move in with him, but she politely declines. She says that sometimes it is better to leave things as they are. Something about her does not seem right. That night, we see Hannah and Isabel back at home. Hannah is reading a story while Isabel is sitting beside her. At that moment, Isabel looks out the window and sees something moving outside. It turns out that Fiona has assumed Isabel's body, and Isabel's trapped spirit watches everything from the outside, hinting that the curse will not end.